Another thing I want to mention, I think that probably everybody listening now has been able to experience and understand there's a lot of heavy science. There's a lot of innovation happening there that you're leading at LifeWave. And I think one of the many superpowers you have is the ability to take these complex scientific and technological concepts and distill them down and make them very approachable and understandable, and without losing the audience, which a lot of times we've all sat through science presentations, at least for me, coming from a marketing background and not a science or math background, concepts can kind of go over my head, but you present it in such a way that it's easy to understand. It's easy to connect. It's easy to be inspired by. And I'm curious, in your leadership style and approach, how you've been able to balance that approach with such deep science and such deep technology around the products, but also the motivation, the inspiration to a huge sales force. How have you been able to kind of balance and have both of those dynamics work so well together?
Well, I really love sales and marketing. At my core, I want to be an inventor. But when I was in college and after I graduated, I had to survive by taking sales jobs, and then I was building my own businesses. So that involved learning sales and marketing and trying to be good at it. And so I've always had to have a balance and a blend between the two. So when I go at product development, it's always with the thought of, well, what am I really trying to do here? What type of benefit are people going to get out of this technology? So I kind of start with the marketing side and be thinking about ultimately, why are people going to buy this? And then on the development side, you think about how do you structure the clinical studies so that you can ultimately support those claims. But it really will come down to an overarching goal. So the overarching goal is, how can we stop and hopefully even reverse human aging? That's the goal. So that would be something that would be highly saleable and highly marketable to people. So now the question is, okay, how are we going to get there? And in our case, we spent many, many years investigating species that don't age. So this is, in science, we call this biomimicry or biomimetics. And it's the idea that we can look at tardigrades, planaria, hydractinia. We can look at these species and say, okay, we know these species aren't aging. The question is, can we learn something from them so we can apply it to human beings? And in this particular case, very fortunate is that we were studying lobsters when I discovered a biological code in lobsters that was responsible for their longevity. And fortunately, we were able to create technology to duplicate that. And now what we found through our clinical studies is that this does, in fact, have an extraordinary effect on human beings. So all these things kind of have to, line up together, but ultimately you really have to establish what is it that you're trying to achieve. And, stopping human aging, I think most people would probably dismiss that and said, yeah, of course that would be great, but, you're never going to get there. But in fact, in this particular case, I think we will.
No, that's really exciting. Again, it's always impressive to see how always, whenever the science or health benefits are presented, the business benefits to the brand partners in the field are always presented as well. So, it's not just product benefits for health's sake, but more of that holistic approach to both sides of the house with the product and the business opportunity side, I think is always amazing. Now, I know a big part of your innovation strategy centers around AI, and that you're literally getting it into every aspect of the business and leveraging it in some really interesting ways. One of the impressive things is you always speak about it in very human-centric terms. Obviously, this is going to be very disruptive to a lot of people, a lot of industries, a lot of jobs, but you have always described it as kind of a tool to help humans, to help us be more effective, but it even goes into your hiring strategy. Do you mind sharing a little bit how you're approaching the disruptive nature of AI with this human-centric approach?
I would credit Gene Roddenberry and Star Trek for this.
Okay.
There's an old, as you know, we were blessed to have William Shatner speak at our 20th anniversary event, along with Doug Drexler, who's won 2 Academy Awards for Star Trek design. He's worked on Star Trek for 40 years. In the original Star Trek series, there was an episode called The Ultimate Computer. And they had taken this advanced, they didn't call it AI at the time, but that's effectively what it was. They had taken this very advanced AI computer, they connected it to the Enterprise, and it was essentially replacing the captain and a number of other people on the ship and making all these decisions. And they found out that it was extremely efficient. And there's a scene where Captain Kirk says, well, what do you think about this, Spock? I'm paraphrasing, this might be practical. And Spock says something along the lines of, it's practical but undesirable. Computers make excellent servants, but I have no wish to serve underneath one. And I think that's a good lesson, is that if we go so far down the AI trail, we all may end up working underneath them. And I don't think that is ever going to be a good thing. So computers make excellent tools, but nonetheless, they are tools, and they should be used that way with people in control. So when we think about how do we want to use AI in customer service, I would say that would be a good example. We're implementing AI, and what we will do to improve job satisfaction is, instead of firing highly trained customer service people, we're going to move them over into an outbound customer service. So now they can be developing relationships with the brand partners and improving brand partners' experience with the company. So they'll be in an outreach program. When we look at order fulfillment, we look at integrating AI and robotics. And so this will be so we can have 24/7 order fulfillment. It's not going to be to replace existing staff. They'll be in a supervisory role. And as a matter of fact, we'll give our order fulfillment staff an opportunity to learn about robotics, how to service these machines, and how to work with them. But I don't want to run a company where we're replacing human beings with machines or AI. It's a mistake, and that's not something I want to do.
Oh, I think that's such a beautiful approach. And I know with the rapid continued evolution and advancement of AI, as well as adoption, I know a lot of companies feel like they're behind. They don't know exactly where they should be and what they should be doing. Where do you feel that companies should be at today? What should they be focused on today? And then as you look out a few years, where should the focus, or the evolution be at that point?
So AI is progressing so rapidly that generally anyone that tells you they know what's going to happen with AI in 3 or 5 years is they don't know what they're talking about, or they're kidding themselves, because it's just progressed too quickly. So I would say it would be important to have someone on staff that's just looking at and focusing on AI and all of the different apps. And it's one of these things where it's important to just get started. So there's already, of course, some great tools, which are text to image converters, and some of those things can be used. We have an individual who was creating graphics for Hollywood movies that we've been working with on a consulting basis. And one of the projects that we have for him in 2025 is to be looking at programs like OpenAI Sora, and how can we use some of these text to video programs for integrating into the video work that we're doing. We have a robotics initiative that we're doing with our IT department to be looking at, okay, over the next year, there's new robotics that are coming out. How could we potentially integrate that into what it is that we're doing? So I think first, it's important to have someone on staff that is leading the way on AI. And then every single department needs to be evaluated, and department heads need to take ownership on this and say, okay, we are going to use some of these new AI tools, but let's say, make sure that we're doing things in a sensible fashion. So for companies, I think that feel that they're behind, I wouldn't worry about that so much, as long as you kind of get started and start to become familiar with the tools that do exist, and knowing that a year from now, those tools could be obsolete and you're already looking at new ones.
Yeah, with the innovation, kind of that culture of innovation you've created, it's been really impressive to see how the AI plan and strategy is part of each department's strategy here internally. Everybody has it as part of their plan, current as well as future state. And I found that very interesting, that it's just already top of mind across literally every department at the company. It's really impressive as part of the culture you've created here.